Hi there, I'm Jen. Welcome to today's One at One. I was reading through the conversation between the lawyer and Jesus in Mark 12 when he says to him, Jesus, choose one commandment that distills all the rest. Trying to test him. Boil it all down to a single point. No pressure. I would have been totally tongue-tied and I would have been lying awake in my bed thinking all the ways I could have said it. But, Jesus never had to worry about that, and he also had much nobler claims. He was guiding the misguided, and he answered like only he could, very much to the point. I love this passage because it also speaks to our hearts today. Who is the most important in your life? Because it affects everything. Okay, so consider the original setting of this conversation. Jesus says, the most important one is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There's no commandment greater than these. This phrase that Jesus uses is the Shema, that first phrase that he states. The word hear at the beginning of that phrase is loaded with meaning. Hear meant hear, but also believe and obey. Do you really believe it? Well, do it. Very important in Jewish culture. It was the cornerstone of faith. It was an oath of loyalty. It was a call to place him at the very center of life. Every Jewish child grew up hearing it and reciting it twice daily. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. But why was that phrase so important? Well, it's the description of a proper relationship between God and Israel. He alone was their God. They were to recognize Yahweh and him only. It was a call to allegiance, a daily recommitment. The commandment here is actually a call to commit to the one true God. It was so important Jews would recite it on their deathbeds. Many Jewish martyrs would recite it as they died. That's how important it was. It's so important for us today too. This was no preamble to what Jesus was going to say. He was already saying it here, and his listeners would have understood it. The passage goes on. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. That means love God with everything you've got. Because God gives himself totally and unreservedly, totally in love to his people. He expects his people to do the same. Christ gave himself totally and unreservedly for our sakes. If we get that, then we have no problem loving God with everything. And it becomes the only appropriate response. And emotion doesn't even begin to describe the depth of this love. It's not just an inward mental state, it's loyalty to, it's utter commitment, it's passion that jolts to action. It distinguishes God's people from others. It means throwing our whole lot in with God. It intervenes, it rescues, it means we help any way we can. It means we organize our lives around the one, both inward and outwardly. With all we are, this means all our resources, what God has given over our lifetimes, wealth, possessions, family. It implies sharing, giving it away, as long as we have breath. And there's a willingness to sacrifice. Maybe not literally our lives, but maybe it's our comfort or the way we want things to go, just for someone's ultimate good. Jesus loved the Father and us with all his life until he breathed his last. That's what we're getting at when we say love God with all you've got, because Jesus loved us with all he had. So we come to the second part, love your neighbor as yourself. The Jewish people were communal. It was one of the early church's outstanding characteristics. Remaining active in the worship community, they enjoyed outsiders, they welcomed new believers, but it wasn't just a Jesus and me mentality, it was Jesus and we. They knew all along we're ultimately social beings, and they were meant to live in a vertical community with God and horizontal community with others, and we can only truly love others if God first rules in our hearts. Which begs the question, so does he rule? If God isn't in the rightful place in my heart and life, I can insert myself easily, and it's not about me. Love for God will shape my relationships and will motivate me to say and do the things I do. It makes my relationships all about him. But sin causes us to forget all this. We have this struggle, and there is an answer, because there's an amazing persistent grace that God gives us. His transforming love helps us find rest so we're able to love well. We're all unworthy. We all need God's mercy. He keeps loving us and forgiving us for the sins we commit against him. And it sure is easier to extend mercy in light of that, because, we're all in the same boat. In Luke, the parable of the Good Samaritan is right after this passage. I love the phrase that Jesus gives the lawyer after he finishes the story. After giving this object lesson of an enemy showing the kind of love he was intending and asking a couple of questions, he says, go and do likewise. Love me and go love others like I've loved you. So, my friends, and I include myself here, go and do likewise. Have a great day.